You are listening to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, Episode 6, Planning a Game V2. Today we continue our discussion from our previous episode, Planning a Game V1. We talk more in depth on win-loss conditions in a game. We then tackle the other important phase of the game planning, which is the maintenance mode. We give tips on what you should focus on and how long you should do it for week to week. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you like the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, or tell a friend. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome into the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. This week's episode, we're actually going to continue from last week's episode. So we're going to do Planning V2. My name is Aaron. Across from me is Jared. He is the man with the plan again.
For the second time.
How you doing here, Jared?
It's been a decent week. Been decent.
A decent week, really?
Yeah.
Really? I've heard otherwise.
Okay, it was awful, but I just feel like our listeners might not want to hear about, like, wow, this guy's really depressed. Like, no, I'm not, but it's just been Titanic.
He's not depressed, but he can get, just like the best of us, we can have those weeks and we have to vent just a little bit.
The minute you walked in the door, Aaron, let me tell you. I'm so happy my wife still loves me.
So anyways, if you want to participate with the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, you can hit us up at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. And also, if you like the episode, subscribe and share with your friends. Write us a good review on one of the podcast sites. That'd be wonderful, too. 5-star review. Cool. If you don't like the podcast, you're not a big fan of it, then please don't leave a review. I don't want to know that you don't like the podcast. But without further ado, we'll start talking about planning V2.
We really don't want your constructive criticism. Just email constructive criticism.
Just email us, and we'll take that with good stride. So.
It's terrible. Awful. We're terrible people.
So last time we talked about the preparation of a game,
the
development phase of a game, and how you plan in the development phase, and then then we basically spent all 35-40 minutes talking about that. At the very end of it, I was like, man, I really want to talk about one more key thing, which is the win-loss conditions. We hit on it very briefly last week, but I really want to dive deeper into that. And this is something that you came up with.
Yeah, win-loss. Well, I'm sure somebody along the lines of history came up with it way before I did. But so win-loss conditions. Win-loss conditions are essentially areas or points that the players must hit in order to get a certain ending. So, for example, when I create a game, I have what's called a lose ending. It's not really a lose ending because my players still get an ending, and I generally make it cool and fun, even though the objective isn't won. The day wasn't won. And those endings are very tricky to write, and we'll get into writing endings on a future podcast. They're very tricky, but they're crucial to have. You need to have you defeated the monster, but you didn't save the princess. And you can make that a really cool moment for your players. But after that, I have my middle tier. My players won the day, they saved the princess, but they didn't dive into the mystery. They didn't engage in the politics that I was expecting. And then I've got my high tier, which is my players did everything. They looked in every foxhole. They checked every closet. They did absolutely everything that I was expecting them to do, even some things that I wasn't expecting them to do. And that's really the high tier winning. And mind you, when I write these endings, I update these endings. Essentially, I make sure that they are ready to go at a moment's notice and are in present step with the what's currently going on in the story. So, for example, in the one we're in right now, where the players are investigating an international, I don't know, what would you call it? It's not an international incident.
It's not an international incident. We're basically following a ghost story, but there's a lot of political intrigue within the game itself.
Right. I have it ready at a moment's notice in the event that my players just find bad guy. They just stumble upon him. This was something I learned from a prior game when Aaron somehow broke
just
the code.
Stumbled upon the bad guy.
You didn't stumble though. You like systematically you were like there was two guys that could potentially be, and I'm like, well, you'd never pick this guy. He was so unassuming. The killer was so unassuming.
I asked you a question, and you responded with some answers that gave me a huge clue. Which I'm not saying a huge clue, but the two ways that the way you described both people to me, I said it's more likely motivated to be that guy than this guy.
See, no, I never gave you that clue. You came up with it in your brain and like ran ahead and found the first of two murderers.
The harder of the two.
The harder of the two. The one I thought, like, if they get this, that'll be a spectacular ending. And that is a great example of win conditions. So there were two murderers in the town, not just one. So had my players just up and left the town, that would be a lose condition. They just left. Both murderers are still free. They're doing their thing. Okay, here's your ending. It's an ending. It's not great. Might be bittersweet. They might leave the town and they see crows fly overhead as it descends upon yet another body that will be found in the wilderness days later. The end.
Yeah, I think before you go in, because you did have the lose condition. I never heard what your lose condition was, but I think the first place that this kind of came to be a thing was with Dan and Roger's group, and Jesse's group.
No, it was. But what I'm saying is Red Lake was a perfect example because I wasn't intending on creating the win-lose conditions. They just accidentally were existent.
But you had to have them because there would have been if your players play in character, then there is a good chance that at some point they're going to say, this just isn't worth my time. This is so far outside of the character's comfort zone that they would leave, or they would say, I don't have any motivation to stay here and do it.
Precisely, but I want my players to always have that out.
Yeah.
I want them to be able to say, Jared, this story sucks. And not feel bad about leaving a story in the middle of the story. For example, the one I'm running right now. If you guys were like, Jared, it was a good time, but we're returning to the United States. We kind of figured some stuff out, but we're gone. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be hurt. Because I still get to give you an ending. We still got great nights of hanging out together, being together, and that for me is the prize of
that's the real reason why we do the hobby. I mean, we aren't doing this because I'm supremely in love with the system or whatever we're dealing with here. I enjoy hanging out with you guys more than anything else here. So I mean that's the big payoff of the big win.
That's the big one. Yeah, I got you. I was right there with you. Eye contact. But had my players found only one murderer and felt that he was, and I felt like, okay, this is a good solid ending. The game has run its course. The gasoline's out of the tank. Everyone had a great time. Time to end it. My players want to go home. They want to move on to the next story. Here's your second ending. And of course, had my players left at that point, they would have heard a ghostly howl out in the forest. Well, it wasn't really a howls. I'm not quite sure what sound I used. Trust me, I have no clue.
Did you use the hyena sound?
No, it wasn't a hyena.
Okay.
It was specialized. I found it on some site that was like monsterroars.com.
Oh, okay.
And so the third tier, the best tier, was identifying both the murderers, the Wendigo, and dispatching them both and leaving. And that was the tier that you guys got. So those win conditions are critical. Putting them into place when you start developing your game not only leads you to what you are going for at the end, but it also sets your story up a little bit. It says, okay, I want them to find the princess, but I want them to also talk to the princess's sister, who has been dealing with the stalker for a long time, and she's also off in a far off land. And so you can really deal with that. Sci-fi is great for win conditions because, it's never just a gasoline tank. It's the hyperdrive, and you need the gas and the hyperdrive, and you need. Can we get the turrets up so they can fly over the Imperial base, blow up the anti-air guns while they escape the planet or the prison planet? That's just off the top of my head. Go ahead, take that, run across the lines. Looking to you, Nebraska today.
But I think the thing that I like the most about your win-loss conditions, and this has helped me a lot, especially in my current games, is that it it doesn't make your end a failure. So, like, let's say that your players start dying or your players lose engagement. You always have this thing where it's like, well, you're still getting an ending. So your players still have some sort of accomplishment at the end of it. There's a resolution to what they did, and it's better to try and end your games than to just be like, well, this is done and it never happened.
Never drop your games. Oh God, no matter if it's the hottest potato you've ever grabbed onto, set them down gently. Don't drop. Don't.
I mean, we used to drop our games all the time, which is why by incorporating this concept of the win-loss condition, which you did in Roger's game, you did it for two reasons. You had the loss condition in that game because they would have gone with you to hell and back wherever you decide to take them, because they weren't very independent, I would say, as players.
They were linear players.
Yes, they were very linear players. They didn't want to make their own story. They wanted to follow a story.
Right.
Okay. So, your loss condition was, well, the players are playing sort of morally unscrupulous people, and if that is the way that they want to play, I'm going to give them a moral choice at the end of my game. And if you choose the bad one, which was go with the evil guys, okay, more for lack of giving all the details here, you get the power, and there was an ending written for that, but it kind of made you feel like a dick.
and that's I don't know, and we could have a whole podcast, and I think we will in the future, about playing the hero, and how much it's changed our gaming group just incredibly. But yes, having the hero's choice at the end is fantastic. If you have players that are morally unscrupulous, I did that mainly because I had a group of players that were morally unscrupulous. I mean, just it was always the easy, fast, kill everything that moves direction.
They weren't diabolic. They didn't do it in like a nature that was like nefarious. They just did it because it was like, oh, that guy's in my way, I'm going to kill him.
Or, it's like the bartender won't sell to my, I don't know, Ewok. My Ewok pistol whips him. Like, what? Why? That's going to get security there. But no, that's what they wanted to do. And it was a, I guess, a test of, not a test, but an encouragement of, hey guys, maybe we should play a little bit more light side, a little less dark side, a little more Federation, a little less Klingon.
It's way harder to play light side than it is dark side.
It's way harder. The choice, 90% of I think people don't really take because it is so difficult. It's hard to play the good guy. It's easy to play chaotic neutral. Is a D&D reference. It's easy to play somebody with loose morals and can just respond to every situation with very quick violence. But having those win conditions in there, and once the players start seeing that there's another choice, there's a light side to go to it. It's a nice way to slowly guide your players towards the ending and the theme that you want to have, because they want that super ending. I know people who've played video games 17 times just to get the ultimate, just to see what the greatest good and the greatest bad was. People want to see it. They want to explore, because that's something you can't lose sight of as a storyteller. Is, again, you hold all the cards, and the cards are against your chest, and they can't see them, but they want to. They want to open that red door. They want to go into the Cavern of a Thousand Whispers.
And again, when you choose to make your win-loss conditions, it should be very simple, like win-loss conditions. It's like defeat the bad guy and, destroy the base or destroy the nest of the monsters. And they should not be things that need to happen in a exact fashion. It can't be like defeat the bad guy using like the hammer of Thor. Okay?
Yeah, don't... Because that's a classic thing called a MacGuffin. It's a development made by Alfred Hitchcock of I think it's the Maltese Falcon is the movie that had the MacGuffin.
I don't know.
But either way, I'm very anti. This is the key to the way. Please always remember as a storyteller that your players, if they want to get key to door, they need the spade key. They can go play Resident Evil. It is the plethora of options. It is the asymmetrical warfare in which your players can engage in that draws many people to role playing as a whole. It's the freedom.
That's very true. I think part of my point there was if your win condition is too specific, the likelihood that your players are going to do it is very unlikely.
Oh, extremely.
So your win condition needs to be very broad, and your loss condition needs to be basically if you don't do these things, then you have lost. And you might want to consider how the game end changes as the players go deeper and deeper into your game. Because if they leave right away, then the loss in the ending is probably not going to be very good. But if they stuck around for a while and developed personal relationships, then you want to change the loss ending to where you might have some connection to the people that you had processed throughout the game, which I think is going to bring us to our next point, which is maintenance of your game.
Maintenance of games. So we talked about it a little bit about my over preparation and maintenance, where it's about like an hour a day in the morning after my wife leaves. Maintenance doesn't need to be an hour a day. Maybe it's 2 hours after your session. Maybe, but what you need to do is maintain the game. Like any organization, like any system, it needs to be maintained. The thing about maintaining is it gives you the opportunity to see opportunities. Where can my players go from here? Right now, they've made it to, let's say, the planet Xterra 43. So they've made it to Xterra 43, and I remembered that, let's call him, Dave was very interested in the medical technology on X43. His character is a doctor. Okay, let's make a little side story for him. When you have a game that's fully developed and you launch, which is something that we've been practicing for the better half of 2 years now, is game complete, launch after completion. Don't, oh man, I got an idea, I wrote the beginning and the end, and I got nothing in between, but I'm still going to fire, No.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to just point out what constitutes a complete game means that you have most of your NPCs done, you understand how the players can walk from point A to the end, okay? And you can, like, reasonably fill in gaps if the players go off the beaten trail.
I would describe it to very well made. I don't know, is it Swiss cheese? Swiss cheese has the holes.
Swiss cheese does have the holes, yes.
You want at least very well made, very tight Swiss cheese. You don't want gaping holes in your plot line. Are all the holes tied up? Do you have most of your NPCs locked, stock, and ready to rock? That really will level up your gaming. Shameless plug. Trust me, it will bring wonders to your storytelling, because as you move into the maintenance mode after development, sometimes you'll know my players didn't get very far. They got to Xterra 23. They didn't really do much there. Well, I've got the whole next week already done. I know what goes on in that planet and where they need to go. So it gives you that opportunity to create those small opportune times for your players. The doctor stumbles upon a disease that's going on there, and it lets you create pocket stories, side quests, whatever you want to call them. I call them pocket stories.
I mean, the real benefit of having the maintenance mode and the reason why you need to do it is that your players are going to start doing things, and we talked about this in best laid plans, that your players are going to do things and they're going to go the wrong way. And it's not incorrect to say that they're going the wrong, like that's what the maintenance mode is for you to enlighten that path and put life and character in that path, because your main path is done.
Like that life and character.
So, what you're trying to do is and also what you might see is you have an NPC who knows some information, or an NPC that your players are going to talk to in the next piece of the game, and maybe you forgot to give them a critical piece of information, so that NPC needs to know it, okay? Or your players are starting to think in a specific way, so you need to put different things in their path to counter them or steer them back onto the right path.
Maintenance mode is also great, especially in the I forgot to give them information. I realized that I totally forgot a critical NPC that I meant to make, and had I not had my maintenance mode, I wouldn't have made him. My players would have walked into an institution, and that person wouldn't have existed. So it's really helpful for the oh crap I forgot, because if you place yourself always in the development mode, and once you fire and forget, trust me, it's gonna be there are gonna be some troubles along the way. But if you constantly maintain and look at how can I get better, what happened, do a post mortem of your last game, and plan for the future. And having that plan for the future is just it really can bring a lot of opportunities, because once they get to Xterra, and yeah, you didn't plan for there to be a plague on Xterra, but you took that opportunity. Wait for that one player to see the joy in their eyes, and that brings me to my next point: is building situations for your players, your characters. For me, when we started this investigation game, we had one lawyer, essentially a smooth talker, a diplomat, a bard. We had a tracker, essentially a ranger. I'm pretty sure in most sci-fi games they're still called rangers.
Actually, he was pretty much the quintessential ranger. He didn't
was.
want to do anything with anybody, and
He hated all life except for animal life. No, he
No.
hated animal life. This is the Jim that we promised to talk about earlier. He was the quintessential ranger, except he did not get along with animals. He hung them on his wall.
he was not officer friendly with
He
animals.
was not. He would have shot Smokey the Bear in the face.
A talking bear.
Talking bear. Put that one up on my wall. That there bear talked. So the thing about and then I also had one player who was playing former cop, but specifically forensic sciences, crime scene analysis. And every game that I built, I made sure everyone had a part in every session. Everyone had a part, not just in the story, but next week coming up, what's my talker going to do? What's my tracker going to do? What's my forensic analyst going to do? They need to have at least something where they can be special almost in every session. Yeah, there might be a session where that it just doesn't work out for the story. But try to bring those moments to them and watch the light in their eyes.
Again, maybe that's what you end up doing with your maintenance session there, is you're trying to foresee how the players are going to work in the next session and where they're going to go. So you try to flesh out the NPCs that you're working on, make sure that they all have their, dot all your I's, cross all your T's, make sure everything looks good in that scope, in that realm. Or maybe, and you did this in Red Lake very well, a situation comes up where you decide to design this beautiful scene for the next session. So, I mean, we have a couple different ways that we can go ahead and do things in the maintenance mode. And the other thing that you can do in the maintenance mode is, as you come to the end of your game, you can really kind of change your ending based upon the actions that the players have done, because your ending is not set in stone and static from how it began. Because if your players chose to go a different way, you need to fill in the gaps in your ending. Something that you did not do great in the last Shattered Sphere is that you wrote the ending and you executed an ending, and there were things in your ending that were like, that didn't happen.
That never happened. And I was like, crap. But that whole game was a learning lesson. It really. I can't mock that game too much, because I walked away with it with so many lessons learned. And I guess that's another part of development, is when you begin developing or do your maintenance or whatever, look at your lessons learned from prior games. Okay, man, last time I didn't do this very well. Let's try to do that better. Don't shy away from things that you don't feel particularly strong in. And like, for example, combat. Some people, man, they just can't do combat. They shy away from it because it's messy, it's brutal. But we'll talk about that in a future podcast. But it's don't be afraid to engage what you did poorly the last time, and to do it better the next time, or focus on it. But don't lose overall focus of just creating a good story.
Yeah, and I do want to go into one of the things that you made, like I said, in the maintenance portion of this. If you have a good planned game, you can definitely put a lot of really good flavor into your game, especially if your game has been designed well from the start. So your maintenance mode should not be trying to design entire new aspects to the game. It should be about filling in the gaps that were not quite deep enough, or adding a new scene that you might need. And like I said, you did this in Red Lake, really, really special. It was a really good scene.
Oh yeah, because when you come in with that developed game, that one that's ready for launch, and you've been doing your maintenance, and honestly, I got to a point where I was so maintenanced up, but the game was going so well, I was so jazzed. I was like, I see this scene coming up. We had just ended the night. I actually was like, man, I'm so excited about this scene. It's going to come down to it because one of my players' actions, one of our players had killed one of the bad guy's brothers, and it was known that this bad guy was going to come for them. So they had an ally who was like, well, I can't let them get killed by this bad guy because the ally's like, these guys don't stand a chance against the bad guy. So he went head to head. And I said, that's a really cool idea. I want to go with it. And with having maintenance mode and that weekly doing it, the weekly doing it. Okay.
Don't question it, Jared. Just do it.
Just keep quiet. Just do it. I was able to make a really emotional scene out of the moment. And again, we'll have an entire podcast on music and the power of music. But I was able to plan the music. I was able to drop special maps in Roll20. I was able to really create a scene that just, man, even tugs at my heartstrings. Even I was like, oh crap, I'm gonna cry.
It was a really good scene that you were able to craft, and you were able to craft it because if you look back at our previous podcast and planning, your design of the game was extremely well done. You had all of your NPCs, for the most part, fleshed out and put together there. You did have plot holes in there, but this was kind of your first go at having a complete...
Plot holes are going to happen.
Yeah,
They're like plot holes.
Yeah, plot holes are going to happen. Potholes are going to happen. So it wasn't perfect. Okay, so I'm not saying that he spent, months planning this magnus opus of sort of a game. It had flaws to it, but for the most part though, when you walked into that game, it was really, really planned out. It was more planned out than you would ever had a game before. Okay, and you had a lot of forethought into how we were going to get the information from different people and how we were going to put things together. And so every week you didn't have to do a lot of work in terms of editing your story and trying to fix up your story.
No.
It was a lot more of, the maintenance on, I know this scene is going to come up. Maybe I should put in a map. Okay. I know this scene is going to come up. Maybe I want to add more detail and description to the scene. Okay.
Yep.
And then you ended up with this situation like you just talked about. This thing happened. Instead of going to just kind of phone it in and talk about it next week, and we're just going to be like, it happened, this guy did his thing, behind the scenes. No, you made this very big, powerful story. It incorporated one of your major rules, which is you added a combat to the game. So something that maintenance modes are really good for is that they allow you to see, was last session boring? Well, because last session was boring, I'm going to add some spice into the next session.
I need some gunshots.
Yeah, I need some gunshots. I need a good sword fight. We need to have something.
Ready your blasters.
Maybe there's a bar, tavern. You can find the situations to put them in, and you can make it feel more organic as you do that.
And that's the thing. It's really those opportunities are just, oh man, they're so good. And storytellers, DMs, GMs, masters of ceremonies, take advantage of those opportunities. And in that maintenance mode, trust me, having a maintenance mode will change your life. It's gonna bring a whole new flair to it.
It'll also cover you if your players do something like kill a really important NPC.
Oh God, and that actually brings me up to I don't know if I'm actually going to tackle this, but in planning with maintenance mode, if the night takes a sudden turn, and I think this actually fits more in with technically learning our best laid plans of mice and men, and learning to adapt to your players and what they're doing in the game. Never be afraid to to close the night a little early. Never be afraid of that, because that has saved my bacon more times, because sometimes your players will go so far off the rails, you can't calculate the consequences of their actions.
Yeah, best laid plan speaks about, like if your players do something different in the game and it's within reason and you can just kind of breathe and walk through it and still execute your story, keep going. Okay. But sometimes your players are going to do something so crazy like put on the mask. Or
put on the mask. So one of our players, the major NPC, he was immortal, had supernatural powers due to this mask he had in his treasury or his safe. And one of my players just looked at it and was like, I put on the mask. I'm like, you what? It's like, I put on the mask. Well, I got to hold it there for the night because I don't know what to do with that. And literally having that maintenance session throughout the week I was able to create a really good thing to that. I'm not encouraging people to do it often, but there are some points where you don't be ashamed to. Don't go home and, oh man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like you should be in a situation where you ever feel like you have to continue because we're doing game that night and, it's supposed to last for 5 hours. You might end up in a situation where, players just aren't feeling it that night, something like that, and you can use that time to reorient players as well. So, I mean, don't just use it because you need to maintenance something. You're like, holy crap, they really went off in the wrong way. Like, I did not expect them to go steal that plane and fly off to Calcutta or something.
I mean, if they take that plane and Calcutta do they go? I mean, that might be a bit like, guys, we're gonna have to pause.
We're gonna have to just pause. Maybe you only need 10 minutes to pause. Guys, give me 5. Okay, I gotta figure this out.
Give me 5 because I don't even know where Calcutta is. I do. But in India.
Yeah, but
I love the Indian subcontinent. Yes, I know it's called a subcontinent.
But yeah, those are just a little bit of a way to kind of utilize your maintenance period and your maintenance time. I mean, do you have anything else you want to add to the topic, Jared?
I mean, like honestly, I think we covered a lot, and I'm happy that this is our first doubleheader session. Did one, now we got to do another. It's made me very pleased. Oh yes, I do have something. Writer's block. It is something that every storyteller, DM, GM, master of ceremonies will come across. Writer's block is very difficult, and instead of me trying to present to you, our listeners, a variety of methods to beat writer's block, I will encourage you to go online, because there are people out there way smarter than me, way smarter than Aaron. I mean, not many people smarter than Aaron, but
there's a lot of people smarter than me.
Smart and handsome.
There's a lot of people smarter than me.
Quite the catch, ladies.
Nope, do not listen to
him. He's in a committed relationship now. So, okay, I'm back on track. It's really writer's block can really hurt. What I would encourage storytellers, GMs, all to do is not deviate. One of the methodologies that they do for writer's block is just free write for 5 minutes and something else. Very effective when you're writing a book. Can sometimes get distracting when you're writing a game that is meant to launch. And it was interesting that our friend Brian was talking about it, I think, 2 weeks ago. He was talking to one of our other friends about just stay the course, because a lot of times as a storyteller, you'll get distracted. And I am the worst with this. I get story ADHD. I think of one story and I'm like, man, this is freaking awesome. I'm going to write the book on this one. And 2 weeks later, something else pops into my head. And now I got to write the story on this one. And it delays development a lot. When you get a good story, hold on to that story. Stay the course. Does that mean you can't abandon a story for a better one? No. Nothing we say is hard, fast rules. They're suggestions. Helpful guidelines. More like guidelines.
Yes.
Pirates of the Caribbean reference right there. Go Disney. Go Disney. But maintaining that course is really difficult, and sometimes it's physically exhausting, it's mentally exhausting. But if you put in that time and effort, what we started off this 2-episode discussion on, I'm encouraging you, I'm pushing you, keep hitting against it, and sooner or later, you will find a way through and to make that story that you really want to tell. Distractions will be there. Let the distractions come. Use a pad of paper. Write that down. It's a good idea. But maintain your course. I really encourage everyone with that because I myself have struggled with it. I've beat my head against a wall on it. Okay, physically sometimes I've definitely banged my head against the wall. More work related, less hobby related. It's funny because like my wife will. You're really beating yourself up over this. And I'm like, when a master modeler gets his model in the bottle and then it falls apart in the bottle, he gets ticked. Does anyone look at him weird? My hobby is role playing. So I bang my head up against the wall. Why does anyone think that's weird? But, I have a wife who loves me.
One more thing that I also want to mention too, and we didn't really hit on this in the first planning episode, so I just want to leave us on this note here. Don't ever plan your game with the intention that it's going to be a masterpiece.
Oh, God, no.
Do not plan your game with the intention that it's going to be a masterpiece. Because the more you start trying to make the perfect game, and it's going to be so grand and epic and amazing, the faster it's probably going to end up in one of those lost conditions.
It's going to end up in the lost condition. It's going to be unsatisfying to you as a storyteller because it's not going perfectly, and it's not a movie, and you don't have a pre-production meeting with your players to make sure they know what to do because what you've written and what you've already planned. You don't have that opportunity. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be messy.
But a good planned game can make a good game a great game.
It can make it amazing. Just amazing. But yeah, definitely a good point. Don't go in with that magnum opus mindset. Just go in with that. I'm gonna make a good, solid game. As we call it, always like I'm just
gonna go to the plate and have a good at bat. Okay.
A good base. I'm just gonna get on base. That's my plan. Just get on good solid hit on first base.
Have a good at bat. Let your players determine how well you did.
Exactly. Allow my players to tell me if it's a home run. But yeah, that's a good catch. Good catch.
But that's gonna be all for us on the planning side of things. We might come back to this in a future episode, but
I pity the fool.
And Jared pities the fool. So until next time, my name's Aaron. That's Jared. This is Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. Subscribe, like, give us a good review, or don't. And have a good night, guys.
Good night, everyone.